Okay. Hello and welcome to the Parsha class, Parsha Ki Tissa 5785, and there's quite a bit to say. It's a very jam-packed Parsha. It's a little bit intimidating. Let's put it that way. There's quite a bit to say about it. There's a lot of confusion. It's not exactly a clear situation. That's why there's so many commentaries explaining what exactly it is that the Jewish people did in worshiping the golden calf. What exactly was the solution to the golden calf? What exactly did Moshe do? Why did he do it? What is breaking the luchot? Was he angry? Was he scared? How was that going to be a solution to the problem? A lot of issues, a lot of things to talk about, and we shouldn't drag our feet here. Let's get right into it. Let's share the source sheet sent out earlier. And that's it right there. Wow. Okay. And I tried to bring sources from different parts of the parsha, as I typically try to do, sometimes with mixed success. But the intent here is to sort of go through the entire parsha from beginning to end, and obviously stop and focus on certain aspects, sort of hopefully kind of flush out the story as best we can. So early in the parsha, we're told about the commandment to give the half shekel. We've spoken about that in the past, and also we're told about. And so in that, in the very beginning of the parsha, that's where it gets its name, Ki Tissa, when you count, right? V'daber Hashem el Moshe Lemor, chapter 30, verses 1. Sorry, chapters 11. Back again. Chapter 30, verses 11 through 13. We have V'daber Hashem al Moshe Lemor. Hashem spoke to Moshe saying, Ki tissa et rosh b'nei Yisrael, when you count the Jewish people, ifkudehem, v'datnu ish kofer nafsho la'Hashem, pivkodotam v'lo yeh bahem negef pivkodotam. A person should give, in counting the people, in order to avoid a negef, a magifa, a plague. The only way to count the people is for people to give a certain amount of money. How much? Ze yitnu kol ha'over al pekudim. This is what they should all give. Machzit ha-shekel, b'shekel ha-kodesh. They should give half a shekel, right? Just one half of a silver coin, or a half silver coin, whichever way you want to look at it. Esrim gera ha-shekel, machzit ha-shekel, teruma la-Hashem. It gives us the value of the shekel. This is the half shekel, and like I said, we spoke about this in the past. Obviously, we as a congregation, we spoke about this a few weeks ago during Parshat HaShekel, which we read in the beginning of Adar, because the Mishnah tells us that it was in the beginning of Adar that the courts would collect this tax, this census/tax. And what we did not discuss, what's worth noticing, is that the midrash, and there's different versions of the midrash, but basically the Tanhuma says that Moshe Rabbeinu was confused about this half shekel. What should it look like? What's the coin look like? Right. So it's a little bit strange, granted, that he was confused, if you think about it, because he could be confused about something that's very detailed. The menorah he was confused about, and Moshe and Hashem had to show him the menorah in a fire, right? So, and other things as well. So some of these things are complex. The menorah had a lot of details. Where there's still machloket about whether it was curved, whether it was straight, whether what the different pieces look like, the blossoms, the pomegranates, all that. So here we have the half shekel. It doesn't matter what it looks like, you would think. It's just a half silver coin. Halacha is a half of a silver, 50-cent piece in America counts. A half of the value of the currency, of the main currency used in the country. That's what is considered this half shekel. Ideally, it should be silver, That's or the value. There's I'm not going to get into halacha here, but here Moshe is confused what it should look like. What should a silver coin look like? What's the problem, Moshe? The midrash says that quotes Rabbi Meir, not al kadosh baruch hu kimin matbe shel eish tachat kisei hakavod. Hashem made a coin of fire from underneath his throne of glory. All of this is very symbolic and very confusing, but just what so that's somehow that helped Moshe understand what's happening here. So there are a number of commentaries. I saw this quoted in the name of Yosef Nehemiah Kornitzer, and I looked through the books. I couldn't find where he says this. It might be in one of his other books. It's not in his book on the Torah. I don't think anyway, and it's not in his drashot. So I'm not exactly sure where this is quoted from. But he points out that there's a Gemara and Bava Metzia that sort of lays it down that money is not all it's cracked up to be. Money is not a great thing. Money can I wouldn't go so far as to say it's the source of all evil, but money can be misused and it's just a tool and it's very easy to be corrupted by it. The Chazal tell us elsewhere that it's easier to be poor than to be rich. Right? If you had your druthers, which test would be easier to pass? The test of poverty is an easier test than the test of wealth. But all of this brings to mind the idea that Moshe must have been very confused at this point because to forgive the Jewish people, to avoid plague, to count these holy people, we're going to use money, dirty, filthy, stinking money. Why would you use money for something like such a holy, important thing? And so Hashem showed him money coming from the throne of glory. And the symbolism, explains Rav Kornitzer, is this, that money can be dirty. Money can be gross. But if it's used correctly, money can come from the throne of glory. If it's used for mitzvot, it can be elevated. We elevate it. We're in control of the money. Sorry, that could be misinterpreted. Money doesn't control us. We control it. Right? We as individuals have the power to decide what we're going to do, and that makes our money either dirty or not, depending on how well we use it. If we use it for mitzvot, if we use it for tzedakah, if we use it for improving or benefiting the society or our community, that's one thing. If we use it for our own personal pleasures, to take our 3 vacations a week, or fly around the world, or fly to space for no reason, whatever it is, that is probably a misuse of money. That money could have been used for something better. And when all said and done, I think the point remains that money is like I said, can be dirty, can be evil, but it depends again on what we do with it, and it can be actually a very beautiful thing. It can come from the throne of glory. All right, so that's one midrash and interpretation. Let's skip forward towards the end of the very long. The first 2 aliyahs in this parsha are very long. It's what they call a very top heavy parsha, right? The first 2 aliyahs are very long because we want the person who gets the aliyah to be a Kohen in first aliyah, second aliyah goes to a Levi, and all of those things happen during the sin of the golden calf, for which the tribe of Levi is not blamed. They had nothing to do with it, as I don't think we'll get a real chance to study that this week, but the tribe of Levi helped Moshe to eradicate the people who were worshiping the golden calf. They had nothing to do; their hands were clean. So, because of that, a Levi should get the second aliyah when the golden calf incident occurs, and then the rest of the parsha is very short aliyahs, more or less. So at least in comparison. Um, so, but in the end of that very first very long aliyah, it says Vayomer Hashem al Moshe leimor, and Hashem said to Moshe saying, Atah deber al bnei Yisrael leimor, ach et shabtotai tishmoru, keep my Shabbat. Ki od hi beini uvenechem adorotechem ladat ki ani Hashem mikadishchem. That they should keep this for every generation, and they should know that I am Hashem who makes them holy. So Shabbat has something to do with knowing that we are made holy. It's a day to recognize the fact that we can be greater than regular human beings. We can be something great if we use this day for holiness. That being said, it happens to be that this connection, this parsha, which has to do with the Mishkan, having Shabbat in the middle of all of this discussion of the Mishkan, and then away to a different subject. So the connection between the Mishkan and Shabbat is one of the ways we know what the 39 malachot are. The way to keep Shabbat is to stay away from the creative activities with which the Mishkan was made, and that is part of Shabbat. That is half of Shabbat, is to stay away from these kinds of creative work, because that allows us to focus more on other parts of our development. And ushmartem et Shabbat, they should keep the Shabbat. Ki kodeshi lachem mechalaleha mot yumat. Somebody who breaks it is given the death penalty. Again, with witnesses, with testimony, and all of the other things that we learn in Sanhedrin. And if somebody breaks Shabbat by accident, there's a sin offering, etc. Ki kol ha'osa ba malacha nichrata hanefesh hahi mikerev ameha. Somebody who doesn't keep Shabbat, it's as if, not that they're not Jewish, it's as if they've disassociated themselves from Jewish society, from the Jewish world. Sheshit yamin ta'aseh malacha, for 6 days to do your work. U'b'yom hashvi Shabbat Shabbaton kodesh laHashem. Shabbat should be holy on the seventh day. It's for Hashem. Kol ha'osa malacha b'yom Shabbat mot yumat. It's repeated again here that the Jewish people are reminded not to break Shabbat, or else they would get the death penalty. V'shamru b'nei Yisrael, and this is the famous lines we say in our tefillah on Shabbat. V'shamru b'nei Yisrael et haShabbat la'asot et haShabbat l'dorotam brit olam. The Jewish people kept the Shabbat, and they did what they were supposed to do, and they considered it like a covenant forever. B'ni uven b'nei Yisrael ot hi li'olam, between me and between the Jewish people, it's Hashem speaking. It's a sign forever. Ki sheshet yimim asa et Hashem. Sa Hashem et hashamayim v'et ha'aretz. Hashem created the heavens and the earth. V'yom hashvi Shabbat v'inafash. On the seventh day, he rested. So all the way back to Bereshit, and again connecting that to the Mishkan, when the Mishkan is often called in different rabbinic literature a sort of a recreation of creation. It's a retelling the whole way and structure of the Mishkan is a sort of microcosm, really, of how the give me one moment or longer. It's a little microcosm of the world itself, and there's a lot of parallels between what the world looks like and what the Mishkan look like, and that's basically for another time. But again, there's yet another connection between Shabbat and the Mishkan. That the Shabbat testifies to Hashem creating the world, so too the Mishkan is a testimony to the fact that Hashem created and still supervises the world. All right, Baruch Hashem. Now, all of this detail about Shabbat gives you the impression that perhaps there is quite a bit to say about this. So let's just, this is the Kli Yakar. We're going to skip a little bit down here, here now on the top of the line here, last words. Tam lebeit Shabbatot dafkahi. So he asks the question, why does it say Shabbat Shabbaton? Right? There's sorry, Shabbatot. It says it in plural. Let's see where he says it. The Shabtotai tishmaru, keep my Sabbaths. Right, so that's plural. Why not keep my Sabbath? It would still make the same sense. So he says, Lefi shahashabbat yeshlo beit bechinot. The Shabbat really has two aspects. Achad hi lizachar ki chidush ha'olam. One is to remember, to really inaugurate. Inaugurate's the wrong word. To commemorate, yeah, the newness of this world, right? It was made new. Who nikra Shabbat Bereshit. And that's called Shabbat Bereshit, that first Sabbath, right? Shabbat Vashniyahi, and the second aspect of Shabbat, Shetalid Shila'atid Hamora al Ha'olam Haba Yom Shikulo Shabbat. Al Zeh Haskimu Hamafarshim. So the other aspect of Shabbat is that besides it's a reference to the first primordial Sabbath, it's also a reference to the future messianic Sabbath, the day that will be all Sabbath. The whole year will be a Sabbath. The whole time will be Sabbath in some sort of way. It's not that discussion is not for now. But again, it's Olam Haba, the world to come, is called Yom Shekulo Shabbat, the day that is completely Shabbat, and that's one of the reasons why here it's plural. So keep both of those aspects. Have in mind in your Shabbat, you have the opportunity to have in mind, that this Shabbat remembers something, remembers that H-Shem created the world, and this Shabbat commemorates something that's going to happen. It inaugurates it. It's like a harbinger. It's telling us there will be a day that's going to be all like this. This beautiful, beautiful day can continue endlessly, infinitely, and that's going to be in the future, says the Kli Yakar. And he says quite a bit, and again we would pause and talk some more about how beautiful Shabbat can be. There's just so much. There's so much about Shabbat that we don't really sort of appreciate. It's a lot of people just take it as a day off, and it is on the one hand, and on the other hand, there's quite a bit more to it, and it's a beautiful day that should not be overlooked. As unfortunately, it can sometimes be. Okay, we'll talk more about Shabbat, God willing, next week's parsha. Vayakel also mentions Shabbat. Maybe we'll say a word or two there as well. Okay, let's go on. And of course, the source is here for you to look at if you're familiar with the Hebrew. If not, then I can try to help. We'll see. Okay, so let's get right into the sin of the golden calf. It all starts in chapter 32. Chapter 32, verse 1. Vayar ha'am ki voshesh Moshe leredet min hahar. The people saw, the nation saw, that Moshe was delayed in coming down from the mountain. Now, he said he would be there for 40 days, 40 nights. And according to their calculations, that time had passed. Vayakel ha'am al Aaron, and the nation gathered onto Aaron. Vayomru elav, and he said to him, "Get up! Asay lanu Elokim asher yelchu lefanenu Make for us a God who's going to go before us. Should be really Elohim, right? They wanted perhaps another God, lowercase g, right? Ki zeh Moshe ha'ish asher ha'alanu me'eretz Mitzrayim lo yadanu me'haya lo. This man Moshe that went up from the who took us out from the land of Mitzrayim. We don't know what happened to him. Um, So let's see what Rav Hirsch can help us understand from all this. So we just the previous verse is important here. I might have been a good idea to share that with you. But the previous verse talks about the luchot and how Moshe was done writing the Ten Commandments. With that knowledge, uh, it says, but even while all this was transpiring on Mount Sinai, that's the writing of the tablets, events were taking place in the camp below that attested for all time and only too realistically to the vast gulf between the historical reality of the people at the law giving and the ideal heights of the Torah which they were to receive. They're not on the same level as the Torah. This is something that Rav Hirsch stresses very, very often. We have this ideal picture of the Jewish people at the time, that they were so great and will never be as great as them. They were great, don't get me wrong, but they were not perfect, and they made mistakes, and that's why the Torah over and over again shows their mistakes to show us that they had somewhere to grow, and we too are not perfect and have somewhere to grow. This gulf had been brought to the people's attention in full seriousness and through acts rich in symbolic meaning as the preparations for receiving the Torah. Lech el ha'am v'kidashtem v'gavalta et ha'am v'gam ha'kohanim v'kedishu. So there's a lot of verses throughout the giving of the Torah, back in chapter 19, where Moshe is told to sanctify the people, to bring up the people. There's a lot of bringing up and sanctifying going on, right? As we indicated above, this fact entails fundamental consequences, which are the foundation of our faith. This people, which could not tolerate the absence of its leader Moshe for 40 days, which could make for itself a golden calf before the fire and lightning of the law-giving had cooled off, and while the loud and clear command, Lo taseh lecha pesel, do not make for yourself an idol, still resounded in its ears, this people was still so remote from the truths and requirements of this law that it could not possibly have emanated from the people as the product of its spirit and the spirit of the time, like all other religions and codes of law. That's his main point. We're going to get back to this in other contexts, but understand that very well. What Rav Hirsch is decrying is the message that was being pushed by scholars of his time and by so-called scholars of our time, so-called scholars then too, that the Torah, like all other codes of law of all other religions, emanated from the people. That's not true. Not for us. Our Torah didn't come from us. Our Torah came from not us, because if it would have come from us, it would have been something that we'd have no problem keeping. There would be laws like, eat whatever you want whenever you feel like it. There wouldn't be laws that would restrain us. There would be laws that there would be laws that we would like, that we would elect. Let's call it, right? By popular election, most people would love that. Sleep in whenever you feel like it. You can go to work if you feel like it. Whatever. These kinds of like these optional parts of your life that nobody really cares, and there's no achrayat, no responsibility. So that's probably what people would want naturally, and that's true for other religions, because that's what all other religions do. They excuse their behavior by sort of demonstrating through their gods that it's okay, right? If if you're Zeus and you're in love with a particular lady and she doesn't love you back, Why? Just take her anyway. And what does that teach the people who follow that religion? Women have no brains, and what they say doesn't matter, and you can do whatever you want. So that's is that is that's is that our religion? No, we have the exact opposite philosophy. So let's continue. At the same time, though these events show us the law in its absolute character, absolute by virtue of its divine origin and in its inevitable and eternal destiny to attain its realization and win a home for itself on earth. It will be kept. The Torah was not kept 100% in the midbar. It's not being 100% kept now either, but there will be a time when we'll be able to completely keep the Torah. At the very start of the Torah's entry into the world, the unworthiness of the nation that was meant to receive it made it clear that one of the two would have to go, either the Torah or the entire generation of the nation for whom the Torah is destined. The decision was instantaneous to give up the entire generation, create a new generation capable of accepting the Torah, and wait. Right? There's a failure in that generation. Now, keep in mind, of course, worth repeating that they were great for their time, but they were not as great as they could have been. God's statement to Moshe, that the nation that had been established in order to receive the law should be destroyed, while Moshe and the law would be assured of a different kind of future. This is later on. It's, verse 10 demonstrates in the very outset the absolute character of the destiny ordained for this law, whose origin is God and whose timelessness springs from God. No one should ever imagine, and here's where he really shuts down these Bible critics. No one should ever imagine that the Torah should be adapted to changing times. On the contrary, each generation is entitled to a present and future only inasmuch as it accommodates itself to the Torah. The Torah is the absolute ultimate goal of the Jewish people, Jewish nation, and the generation of the law giving was still infinitely remote from that goal. If, nevertheless, the Torah, with its unalterable ideal requirements, came down to that generation, the implication is clearly this. The Torah was not given to Israel so that the people should adapt to the changing times or to suit the people's convenience. Rather, the Torah was given to Israel so that this nation should shape and adapt itself until it has elevated itself to the moral and spiritual heights of this Torah. So we're not gonna drag down the Torah. We're gonna elevate ourselves to the Torah. In short, as soon as the Torah came down to Israel, over whom it was meant to reign supreme, the golden calf incident presented it with its first challenge. The Torah is to demonstrate its divine power by training the people to accept it out of complete submission. And the sanctuary of the Torah is to be first and foremost a place of kapara, a place of unceasing education toward a better and purer future. He goes on from there and he says quite a bit more. But I think the point here is his point here is pretty clear. The Jewish people were not perfect, and they made the mistake of the golden calf. And the reason that this happened at this time is because it needed to be clear from the outset, from the very beginning, that Torah is supreme. You keep the Torah. Torah says no golden calf, and you make a golden calf. It's not like the Torah is going to say, you know what? Let's get the magic eraser. Let's change that whole thing. Golden calves are okay. It doesn't do that. That's not how that works. We adapt our lives to the Torah, not the other way around. So here, by the way, he's fighting the early reform movement. It's a very important part of the understanding Rav Hirsch in general. He has this is the burgeoning reform movement in Germany at the time, and he's responding to it with this commentary that basically says that, and he actually, interestingly enough, he responded to them in their language. He wrote his commentary in German. The first such, not the first such commentary of Moses Mendelssohn also had a commentary also in German, but there's another translation. But his translation, his commentary was the first Orthodox, uh, for a lack of a better word, response to the Reform movement. Okay, let's um let's go on. Very good. Let's now we've mentioned this Seforno in the past, but it's worth repeating. What happens is that Moshe is told by Hashem that the Jews are worshiping the golden calf. He goes down the mountain with the luchot, right? And Vayhi kasher karav. So this is chapter 32, verse 19. Vayhi kasher karav el hamachaneh. When he got close to the machaneh, v'yar et ha'egel, and he saw the golden calf, umecholot, and the dancing. V'yichar af Moshe, and Moshe became angry. V'yashlech miadav. Sorry, that's the trick here. So he sent from it. He let it go from his hands. Et haluchot, the tablets. V'yishaber otam tachat ha'ar, and he shattered them, destroyed them under the mountain, the foot of the mountain. And like I said, we've had this commentary before, but this bears repeating. Moshe got angry when he saw the golden calf. Why? He knew about this. Hashem told him. Is that not good enough? You think Hashem? Oh, you pulled another fast one on me. No, that's he's not. Hashem's not joking. The Jews are worshiping the golden calf. When he sees that, that should be enough. That's not the way Rav Avadia Sforno understands this. So he says, Kishara shayu smeichim b'kul kol she'asu. When he saw that they were happy in how disgusting they'd become. These picture a little child covered in his own or her own, mess, right? So happy, flinging food all around or whatever, right? Mud, whatever else. Ki inyan, this is similar to a verse in Yirmiyahu 11:15. Ki ra'achti az ta'alozi ubezeh hat katzef v'noash yochel litikun hama'ot ba'ofen shiachzru lemetotam shayu roim le'otam haluchot. So this idea, racheti az talozi, when you did evil, that's when you were happy, right? So that's right. So um, that's it's like the exact opposite of how you should be happy. People think they're happy when they're not keeping mitzvot, but when they act like we're having a great time with this mud, right? So that's not really where they should be going with that, and that's what upset him the most. And he realized Noash, he didn't think that sheyochal litikun. He didn't think he'd be able to fix this at this point. Once somebody's gone that far, it's pretty hard to fix. There's one thing, there's one uh, when somebody does something wrong and they realize it and they want to fix it and they still feel a connection to what's right. That's one thing. But once somebody's quote unquote, happy in their disgrace, yeah, yeah, smechim b'kil kul she'asu, that's a person is that far gone. It's going to be very hard to fix that, and especially a whole nation of people, and that's what really angered Moshe. Um, so Moshe goes through several steps to try to fix the situation. He has, like I said before, he has the Levium kill 3,000 of these worshippers, idolaters. Other people have to, depending on the level of whether they were helpful, or whether they just stood up by the sidelines, or whether they protested. Each person is treated in their own way. And then after all this, Moshe goes to Hashem to ask for forgiveness. He says, Atah, he says to Hashem, chapter 32, verse 32, says, Atah im tisa chatatam, if you will forgive their sin, im ayin, so please forgive, right, if you do, the dot, 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 good, yeah, A plus. Im ayin, if not, mecheni na misifracha asher katafta. Right, take me out of the book that you have written. We know there's a tradition. It's not always. It wasn't, I think, true last year, but most years, it's in this week. I said it wasn't true this week either. Uh, right, so it was last Friday. So it's last Friday. Zayin Adar is Moshe Rabbeinu's yard site / birthday. So it's said that in this parsha, um, no, last week's parsha. Sorry, it was good. Okay, last week's parsha of Tetzaveh. It doesn't say Hashem Moshe's name because Moshe is asked to be taken out of the book right here in this that we just read, and in whenever a tzaddik gazar, whenever a tzaddik wills something, Hashem accommodates, and so Hashem did take him out of the book for one parsha. And which parsha? The parsha of his birthday, right? So to sort of say that even though he's not in the parsha, he's still he's still mentioned. Right? We still talk about him this week, like that, I guess. Um, Second. Okay. Um, so, but what book are we talking about here? Uh, is Hashem keeping a diary? What does taking somebody out of the book mean? Did he really want Hashem to erase his name from Tetzaveh or from the entire Torah, or what? Like what? What are we talking about? If it's the Torah, so this question is raised by Rabbeinu Bachai, Rabbeinu Bachya, sorry, the student of the Ramban. Uh, and he gives different levels of understanding for this. The fourth level he's going to use is a little too mystical and kabbalistic for us today. I invite you to take a look in your free time. I think, yeah, I think Safari has this translated, so you can look at this on your own at your leisure. Meanwhile, back at the ranch, I'll give you the first three sort of explanations that Rabbeinu Bachai gives to this idea, taking me out of the book. Which book? Al Yedei Pshat. Who? Sefer Torah. Like we've been saying, and like that idea has that popular idea has definitely anticipated that the book that Hashem is writing is the book of the Torah, and Moshe is taking. I don't want to be mentioned in the Torah that this failure. I don't want it to be in a book that's going to be. I guess he already predicted how popular it was going to be with the invention of the Gutenberg press. Right, so the world's most popular book is going to be in every nightstand of every hotel. I don't want people to know that I was involved with this failure of a nation. I don't want people to see my mistake, my lack of leadership skills that I sort of warned you about anyway. Right, Moshe had been arguing that he didn't want to be involved in being the leader of the Jewish people anyway, and so he sort of forced into it, and then look, that lack of leadership that I told you about, that's what led to this. He says, please take me out of the book. Al yedei midrash misifrecha kalelet chacham afilu al tanai hi ba Manalan Moshe Amar Mecheni Af al pi shenichaper lahem avon ha'egel nimcha shemo miparshat batat tzaveh shelo nizkar sham shemo shel Moshe klal. So this is that idea I mentioned. It's a Rabbeinu Bachai. It's telling us that indeed that's what it means, that to take me out of a parsha and to not mention me, to sort of as a kind of kapara, as a kind of sort of uh, amelioration of the sin that I was sort of party to, because it was my being absent that caused this to happen. Ayedeh hasechel misifrach kara ma'arechet hakochavim sifr shel Hakadosh Baruch Hu. So, and a more scientific, he calls this scientific, although I don't know if modern science would agree. So he says it means Hashem wants to be taken out of the stars. What does that mean? In a way, the Kochavim, the way Rabbeinu Bachya and many of the other medieval commentators understand it, the stars were a way to predict what would be, what would happen. There's there's a science, although it's a debated science. There's a science of astrology, not to be confused with astronomy, which I don't think is debated at all, but astrology, and whether it's still accurate because of the tilting of the Earth or the speed of the rotation. I don't know, but I'll say this much: in medieval times, many of our great commentaries have put a lot of stress on the ability of being able to predict things or to understand things based on the stars. The Talmud talks about this as well. We have coming up soon, this month, actually, interestingly enough. If you're listening to this year, 5785, you'll know that in this month of March, there's a lot of interesting space science, astronomy events going on. There's a blood moon coming up tomorrow night, and there's a lunar. Obviously, it's connected to the lunar eclipse, and there's a solar eclipse later on in the month. There's a lot of things, and the Talmud talks about whether these are good signs or bad signs for the Jews, for the non-Jews. Okay, let's avoid all that for now. But times of the year have an effect on people. What month they were born in, their astrological sign, if you will, and of course, again, the Jewish astrological sign, not what it says in the newspapers. It's a little bit different, but definitely worth study. So when Moshe says, "I want you to take me out of your book," book doesn't mean literally a book. Book means the thing you use to show the earth, the humans, what is going to happen, which means the stars. Take me out of the stars, says Rabbeinu Bachya. Bin Bachai. Sifru Shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu. They are the book of Hashem. Shekisham Hasper Hu Chakika V'Tziur Otiot B'Inyanei HaChachmot. He shows through them what wise people can figure out about what should happen in the world. Kein Ma'arechet HaKochavim Chakika V'Tziur Kochot Yonei HaAdam U'Mesaper Yimei Chayehem B'Olam Hazeh. So they help us figure out what's going on in the world that we're living in. Excuse me. ונזכרים חקוקים שם כדבר חקוק כשנכתב בספר. וכן אמר דוד המלך, גמלני רו עיניך ועל ספרך כולם יכתבו. So I will lift up my eyes, says David HaMelech, and I will see in your book everything that you have written. So that's that's a little on that. And again, as I said before, the rest of his commentary is probably a little too deep for us for today. But if you're into that sort of thing, for sure, I strongly recommend learning Rabbeinu Bachai. All right. Oh, did we skip something? Looks like we did. Oh boy. Oh boy. Um. Okay. Beit Halevi. Interestingly enough, don't know why this sometimes happens. Like this, some sort of I want to say glitch. It's not really fair to the Safari people, but every once in a while, something like this seems to happen. It could be user error, of course, but that's not it. One moment. Ah, okay. Sorry about that. Yeah. So in the process of Moshe asking for Hashem's forgiveness, Hashem teaches Moshe about the 13 attributes. Now, it's at the end of a class. I'm getting into this. Without going into too much detail, it's important to know that we're not breaking Hashem up into parts. He's not, part of him is kind, part of him is forgiving. That's not what we're saying. The way we experience Hashem in our lives is through these seeming characteristics of Hashem. Not only that, but most importantly, in the command, this is the Rambam speaking. I'm not the Rambam. The Rambam says in the command to be like Hashem, to alechtecha b'drachav, to walk in His ways. It means to be like this, to have these kinds of attributes. So among them, chapter 34, verse 7. Nosar chesed, lalafim, nosar avon, v'fesher, v'chatav, v'nakeh, lo yinakeh poken avon avot, al abanim, al bnei banim, al shilishim, v'al ribeim. Hashem is a notzar chesed. He shows kindness, lalafim, to thousands of generations. Nosar avon, he forgives sin, pesha, and different kinds of sin, chata, different. All of these are different levels of sin. V'nakeh, lo yinakeh, and he cleans, right? He cleanses. V'lo yinakeh poked avon avot, al banim v'al bnei banim, al shilishim v'al ribeim, and he will not then repunish parents for their behavior of their children, or sorry, the other way around. They won't punish for a parent's behavior. They won't punish the children, not the children's children, not the third, not the fourth generation. In other words, not ever. Okay. Says the Beit Halevi on this verse. He quotes the Gemara in Rosh Hashanah that basically says, uh, um, Cheshbon shel Hayud Gimel Midot Nosa Avon v'Fesha v'Chata Hem Shalosh Midot the Avon Hu Mezid Pesha Hu Merad v'Chata Hu Shogeg. Like we said, those are three different levels of sin, right? So Avon is when you sin on purpose. Fesha is when you not just sin on purpose, like you want to do the thing, but you want to do it because you want to rebel. Hashem said no, and you're like, I don't really want to do it, but since he said no, who's he to tell me no, right? The chata is a shogeg is when you sin by accident, and the Gemara in Yuma 36b, there's an argument between Rabbi Meir and the Rabbanon regarding vidui. What the text of vidu should be. And he says, Reb Meir says that we should follow this just like it says here in that order, right? It says Aviti, Pashati, Chatati. Moshe who Omar Nosa Ava Fesha V'chata. So the same order that Moshe uses, what we should use when we bang our chest Yom Kippur time, asking for forgiveness. The Chachamim Omrim, but the rabbi said the sages disagreed with Rabbi Meir, and they said, Elu Hasdonot, Pashaim, Elu Meradim, V'chata, Elu Hashogagot. She'achar she'Torah ad Zdonot, al Zdonot, Umerodim, B'chozer, Umetoda al Shogogot, Ela kach hu Metoda Chatati, Aviti, Pashati, Ela Mahu she'amar Moshe, Nusa avam feshachata hachi kama Shimon Rabbonu shel Olam b'sha'ah sheYisrael chotiim lefanecha v'osim tshuva aseh lahem zdonot kish gagot. So the rabbi said no. And what's the reason? The reason is that we should say in a different order. Our order should start with the most lenient sins, which are ideally, seemingly, that we sin by accident, right? That's Hashem should be more lenient, more forgiving with that, and then should be I did the wrong thing. I really wanted that ham sandwich or whatever. I couldn't help myself, so that's not an accident. That's on purpose. The worst kind is the rebellious sin, where you sin because you just want to upset Hashem. That's a whole different level. So why is this? Why isn't this the level? Why isn't this the order of Moshe? So they put in Moshe's mouth these words: Ribbona Shalom, right? King of the world, creator of the world, master of the universe. When the Jewish people do teshuvah, pretend, make it that, substitute in that even their intentional sins are unintentional. So Tosfot asks the question. So it seems like there's just a difference of. Is this a difference of translation? What's going on? So Tosfot says that when it says Hashem forgives sin, it seems that's how we translate it. It seems like sin is what Hashem is forgiving. That's not what's going on. Really, and of course he goes a little bit deeper into the Tosfot and tries to explain. But like I said, this is a long piece, so we're gonna, just for the sake of time, we're gonna sort of try to skip towards the end. But you see, we've got all these problems. Is Tosfot disagreeing with the rabbis of the Talmud about how what these words mean? Do the rabbis agree? What's going on? This whole discussion is difficult. Why should Moshe pray that the accidental the accidental sins and the non-accidental sins are somehow equal? Should he just be saying forgive everything? Just why do you have to equate them? Just forgive everything. The answer is we learn elsewhere from Yirmiyahu 31:18 that when after it says after I've done teshuvah, that's when I felt regret, and that's when I felt my sin. That's the order it goes in. When you do tshuva, that sparks something in your heart that makes you realize that what you did was wrong. So the first step is actually tshuva. The first step is actually to ask for forgiveness without really recognizing 100% what you did wrong. Therefore, that's why Moshe asked for this kind of equation. Because just like unintentional, accidental sins are forgiven retroactively, they're not forgiven when you did tshuva, they happen when you feel the tshuva, after you've started the tshuva process. That's when they're forgiven. And they're forgiven all the way back to when you did the thing. So that's what Moshe is praying for even the purposeful sins. That he should forgive, like this one in particular, the golden calf, which was not an accident. I mean, it was not, for most of the Jews, it was not, oh, wow, there's a golden calf, let's worship it. You think that's okay? I don't remember saying, I don't remember it saying anywhere in the Lucas that we haven't seen yet not to do that. So, the TOrah, which is the reason why people make mistakes to begin with, so it confuses us. It messes up our perspective on things, and when somebody does teshuva, what they're showing is ideally, and this is what the Beit HaLevi writes. By the way, this is one of the last things that the Beit HaLevi wrote in his sefer. This is where his parsha commentary ends, more or less, because he passed away before he was able to finish his work. But he says that Gedola Tshuva Shedocha Lametet Shebetorah. Tshuva is great. It Lotase Lametet. Shedocha Lotase Shebetorah. It can push off even a negative command of the Torah. The Torah says don't do this, but if you did tshuva and if it's sincere and you did it out of love, not out of fear, that rhymes, then the tshuva is more effective and can save you from punishment. And then that's basically what he says. Right. So that's. And right, so again, this forgiveness that Hashem grants us, it goes all the way back to the sin if it's accidental. And one of the ways, what he's really saying here is a purposeful sin can also be forgiven in that same way. Once you realize that the purposeful sin, once you really do tshuva sincerely, and you realize that was a mistake too. It was a mistake to do that. It was a mistake to think this way. That's what brings it back. It equates it with the accidental sin, and even the purposeful sin will then be forgiven. All right. That's what happened. One sec. Let's delete that. Okay. All right. Last short piece. I just saw this from the Balaturim, but I thought it was a nice idea. Moshe eventually picks up his stuff and moves his tent elsewhere, and that becomes what we call the Ohel Moed, the tent of meeting. It's mentioned many times even previously, but now we have a better idea of what it is. It's Moshe's tent away from everything else. So it says Moshe Yikach et Ohel. This is chapter 33, verse 7. Not to lo mechutz lamachan. This is after Jewish people are forgiven. Excuse me. After Jewish people are forgiven, he took this tent outside the camp. He far away from the camp. He called it or it was called the tent of meeting. All right. Haya kol mevakesh Hashem yetze el ohel moed asher mechutz lamachane. And anybody who sought Hashem would leave the camp, would go to Moshe out there in the boonies, outside the camp, that's where this Ol Moed was. All right. Says the Kitzur Bala Turim. This is, of course, a shorter commentary. He says, Mekan, from this you learn an important lesson in life in general. It's a beautiful, important lesson that all of us should understand. Shetzarich Adam ligalot kedei limud Torah. There are times that a person must take himself away, move to somewhere where he can learn Torah. Torah study is not just an intellectual pursuit. It has to be acted upon. It needs to be performed, and it needs to be focused on. You need to be able to focus on the Torah you're learning to really put it into practice. And to do that, sometimes you need to leave your spot, leave where you are. Famous Gemara, of course, Mishnah. Tana is approached by somebody. He says, "Would you come? Would you come to our city? We have a very. We'll pay you lots of money. We want like a Talmud Chacham like you to be in our midst." And the man said, "That's very nice, but if you had all the gold and rubies in the world, I wouldn't leave a Makom Torah. I'm in a yeshiva. I'm in a place where I can learn. I'm in a place where I can grow. Nothing can get me out of here. As long as you're growing where you are, that's the place to live. That's the advice my Rebbeim gave me when I asked when and if it'll ever be time for me to leave the town that I live in. And they said, as long as you feel like you're still growing, you have what to do, then that's all that matters. If you feel like there's more growth elsewhere, you should by all means make sure that should be your focus. That should be what leads you, not your job and not your comfort level, not the weather, not anything else. The thing that should take you from one place to another is the pursuit of Torah and Torah wisdom and growth and closeness to Hashem. Thank you, and have a wonderful rest of your week. Happy Purim.